All right, what's up guys? Welcome back to the AdTactix training. This video is going to be a quick start guide on setting up your PPC and just getting a basic understanding of how things work from a bid optimization standpoint with AdTactix. You can do a ton of stuff in here, and I will be covering in a lot of detail all of the features over the course of the next few videos. But for this first one, it's just going to be more geared towards a quick start guide, and you can follow along in your own account, download the bulk file, get your bid override table set up, and kind of go from there. So as you can see over here on the right, in this video we're going to be talking about how you actually import your first bulk file, how you set up the bid override table, how you actually optimize your bids, and then how you go and upload that file back to Amazon after they're optimized. So it's a cyclical process. You're going to download the file, run it through AdTactix, and then upload the optimized file back to Amazon, and then all your bids are optimized from there. So I'm going to hop into the tool here. I've already authorized and got my menu shown here. Watch the previous video if you haven't got to that point. And one thing I want to start off by showing you is in AdTactix, there's actually SOPs for all of the core operations, which you can just hover over the menu here and you'll see kind of a red question mark. Just go ahead and click on that and you're going to get a slide out menu here, and it'll take a second to populate, but you can keep this version open while you're actually running through the steps if you want and scroll down through. The images, you will have to kind of scroll to the right if you want to see the full image. Or when I'm first kind of training people, what I like to do is tell them to click on this video training and give it a second here, and it's going to populate a SOP here in the middle of your screen. And what I recommend is just kind of reading through each step before you actually get started. And in this video, this is going to be kind of the main SOP that I'm going to follow. I am going to kind of go a little bit quicker just because some of this is pretty self-explanatory by reading the SOP. So let me see if I can zoom in actually. All right, so here we go. The first step is you're actually just going to click on the import new data, and let me see here. I'm just going to use actually these screenshots, but it's the import new data is the menu up here, and you'll see it says download and import bulk ads file. You're just going to click on that, and it's going to actually take you to the bulk ads or bulk operations page. What you're going to do is make sure first that you don't have the legacy spreadsheet format selected. Depending on when you're watching this, that'll probably be deprecated and you won't even see that option. But just make sure you have the new format checked. And then for date range, when I'm first getting started, I like to either do 30 days or 60 days. It just really depends on how much sales data you have. And then the exclude, we're just going to do terminated campaigns and then hit create spreadsheet. All right, and then from there, you're gonna have to wait probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes sometimes, depending on how big your bulk file is. And then just scroll down a little bit underneath this kind of create spreadsheet blue button, and you'll see the spreadsheet history. And you're just gonna click that download button there, and that's going to actually prompt you to download your bulk file. And wherever you save that, it doesn't really matter. What I would recommend though is within your Google Drive, you can see the directory up here. When you authorize any of FBXL tools, you're going to get 2 automatic folders that get generated. One of them is this FBXL tools folder that lives inside your main Google Drive account, and then you also have the FBA export files folder. So this is where I actually end up saving all my bulk files. And what you can do is, I'll flash a link up here on the screen on how to download Drive for desktop, and it just allows you to very quickly save any downloaded files off the internet straight to a Google Drive through kind of the open browse menu. So that's kind of helpful because you'll be able to save it directly to this folder. But otherwise, you can just download it and then drag it to that folder. As long as you get it and put it somewhere, you can put it on your desktop as well. As long as you just have it somewhere where you know where it is, that's all that matters. All right, so we've got that. And now that that's kind of saved and we know where it is, now we can go and find it. And this is actually where I'm going to hop into the tool and start working with it. So that's just kind of the initial downloading portion. You should be able to follow step by step with the training SOP there. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. All right, so what you're going to do now is actually just go and import that file that we just downloaded. So go to File, Import, All right, and I have that file actually saved here in this folder, I believe. So I've just got a test bulk file. Yours will be named whatever you have it saved as. You're gonna select insert a new sheet from this drop down here. That's important, and then you're gonna hit import data. All right, so just give that a few seconds, and you may see up here kind of next to the name where it says saving to drive. You do have to wait for that to say save before you can actually like click into the tool, and it's okay to use. But what you should see is portfolio, sponsored product campaigns, sponsored brand campaigns, sponsored display campaigns. You also may see a brand assets tab. I don't think I have that in this test file, but that's another one that will show up. All right, and then it's very easy. Once this is imported, you're just going to come down here and click Sync All Data. Now, before I do this, I will mention there's some supplemental reports that you can import along with your bulk file here. And when you click this Sync All Data, it's going to kind of set up all of them at once. But we're going to be covering those in another video. This one's more focused just on the ads, and you can definitely optimize your ads independent of all the other features in AdTactix. So again, this is just a quick start on getting your ad set up. So I'm going to click Sync All Data, and this is going to now hit yes there. Just kind of pre-prep these 3 sheets for us, and we're going to be able to use them then to optimize each of those sheets kind of independent. So just give it a minute here, and it's kind of doing its thing in the background, and I'll be right back once it's finished. All right, so pretty quick and efficient there. You can see AdTactix is ready to rock. It gives you some suggestions on things you can do now, depending on if you've imported. For some of these, you've had to have imported your search term files, maybe your brand analytics files, stuff like that. But I'm going to hit OK. All right, and the next step that I actually recommend is when you're first getting started, go ahead and click into these tabs, and you'll kind of get an idea of what you're looking at here. So I'm going to minimize this just a little bit, 90%. So the whole point of the bulk files is you can see all of your ad data in kind of 3 databases separated by ad type. So you got your sponsored products, which is going to be the majority of your campaign and budget, the brands and display, and all 3 of them are set up pretty consistent. You can see a red column there that says new bid. That's where our kind of optimized bid is going to show up after we run through the steps here I'm about to show you. But you can see in gray here off to the right, you've got all of your kind of performance metrics. A couple other key columns that get added in that kind of prep script that we just ran is you've got an ASIN column here that allows you to sort and filter this one by this one column for any rows associated with those ASINs, so that can be helpful. Keyword count column, as well as it's a custom column that shows you the number of active keywords or targets that are in each campaign, so you can really quickly see, for example, your single keyword campaigns by using that column. You've also got cost per acquisition, which is a custom column that we added, as well as this target override off to the far left. And this is going to be really important when we talk about the bid override table, which I'm going to be doing here in just a second. And that's the one way that we take the like a unique identifier from each of these sheets that corresponds to the targets that we want to potentially bid more aggressive, or just kind of segment out from the rest of all of our other targets and change our bid parameters accordingly. So just kind of know that that's there for now. The other fields are just pretty self-explanatory. You got your campaign name, ad group name. This entity column is really important. It's going to allow you to sort and filter by the different levels of your campaigns. So if you just want to see at the campaign level, for example, you can clear everything, click this, click OK, and it's just going to show you all the performance metrics for the campaign levels. So likewise, on your sponsored brands, the general format's going to be the same, and some of the columns are going to be different because you have the different assets and whatnot for the sponsored brands. And then same thing with the sponsored display. You've got all your performance metrics off here to the right, and then your kind of campaign data off to the left. Each of the 3 sheets does have the target override field as well, and that's actually what I'm going to jump into now. As far as figuring out, what I like to do is when people are first getting started with AdTactix, show them how to really quickly just find what's really working well in their account and kind of pull that out and put it on what we call the bid override table, which I'm going to introduce that right now. So it's this blue icon, and you're going to make this a little bit smaller so you can kind of see everything. All right, so this is going to be the hub for all of the kind of ad related, either campaign level, target level, account level. You can do it a bunch of different ways, but it's going to be the main hub for kind of managing all of your PPC optimization. So between this screen and our 3 sheets down here, they're going to work together to share the data, share the metrics, and kind of optimize the bids. All right, so how to use this. What you're gonna do is, what I recommend is buzzing through each of these 3 sheets when we first start out and clicking enabled targets here from the optimize PPC menu. And what this is gonna do is, depending on which sheet you're on, we're on sponsored products right now, but it's gonna quickly filter this. It's gonna pull out anything that's either paused or archived at the target level. It's only going to show us actually the target level rows, and then it's going to sort really quickly by orders. So at this step, you can sort it potentially by cost per acquisition, by ACoS. You can do it by the different ones. I always just like to see which targets are converting the most and giving me the most orders. Revenue is another good one that you could sort this by though. At any rate, a Pareto analysis is just the top 20% of the targets that are giving you 80% of your results. So a quick way to kind of figure out which targets those are is click on just the letter AS up here. It's going to select the entire column. And then if you don't have the sum shown down here, you can always change it. So maybe on like count, go ahead and hit sum. And for this example data, you can see it's about 1,800 orders over the past. I think this is either a 30 or 60 day file. So you do 1,800, let's say, times 0.8, and I'm just going to guess and say that's probably, say, 1,500 orders. So let's say that's 80%. So what you would do then is, once you know that number is 1,500, and again, 1,800 times, let me just, so I don't look stupid, 1,800 times 0.8 is 1440. Okay, so I was kind of close. All right, so now that I know 1440, I'm just going to select starting from the top and go down, and again, it's about 10 or more orders, and you can see 1450. Now what I'm going to do is come over here to this target override column that I mentioned earlier, and I'm just going to copy by hitting Control-C on the keyboard that range of data. And what I'm going to do now is just hop back over to the bid override table. All right, and in this override column, column J, I'm going to hit Control-Shift-V. I'm not going to hit Control-V because that overwrites formats and all other sorts of craziness. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-V. Another way you can do it is right-click, paste special, values only. With all FBA Excel tools, when you copy and paste stuff, I recommend only pasting the values, and that'll keep all the formatting in check and just looking nice. So after that, the next step is you want to pick the type of override that you just applied, and we just applied a target level override. So I'm going to actually just drag that down. Let go. All right, now we've done sponsored product. Now I'm going to do sponsored brands using the exact same method. So hop over here, enable targets. All right, you can see I don't have a lot here, so I'm just going to, for the fun of it, grab all of these. If you had a lot, you could run a Pareto analysis on it as well. And I'm going to go over now and Control-Shift-V, and I'm going to go to display. All right, and I'm just going to grab all of these as well. All right, and then I'm going to drag this down like that because all these are target level overrides. All right, so once you've done that, the next step is you're going to sync your bid override table. So to sync it, you're just going to click this little icon here. All right, and you saw that little finish script. That means everything is good to go. Sometimes it'll take a few seconds for kind of these ASIN images and stuff to populate, but in a nutshell, you've essentially got all of your target level override data that is also found in your bulk file, but it's displayed here in a much cleaner format. So you can see over the past 30 days, I think was the date range, these are the metrics associated with each of these targets. You've got a lot of other auxiliary data if you click these little pluses, so you can see the ASINs associated with this target, and that means that for the campaign that this target is in, you're actually targeting multiple ASINs in a few of these scenarios. You've got the match type, portfolio, campaign, ad group. You've got your number of keywords in the campaign that each of these targets are in, shown here. The Target Sniper tool, I'm not going to expand that right now. That's a more advanced feature. We'll cover that in another video. But you can see some of these custom columns. Some of these are going to be blank, and that's just because we don't have some of the data imported. But some of these, it looks like I do have some of the data. So you can see you can populate things like search volume, organic rank. It would show a trend here if we had some of our trend data. Again, there'll be other videos on showing you how to import these. This is the sponsored rank. We have a business report that we import that can show, your total sales, including organic plus your sponsored. Same thing with tacos. Top of search impression share percentage, your sponsored product search term impression share. Same with brands. You can get your search query report rank, your cost per acquisition. We actually have that over here. So these are actually just custom fields that you can kind of change and make your own, but those are some kind of preset defaults. Then you've also got your placement bid modifier percentages here. These are actually inline editable. So I'm not going to cover that in this video, but I'll show you in a future video how you can actually change these kind of on the fly from the bid override table, and as well as some modifier percentage calculations that you can run. And then also another really useful area is the placement metric section. So you just click that little plus button and you can see from a top of search versus product pages how each of these targets are performing. Now keep in mind the placement metrics are at the campaign level, so if you don't have single keyword campaigns set up, this data could be kind of aggregated sum totals as opposed to related to just that specific target. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. And for the rest of this video, we're going to be focusing on the actually setting up your initial bid parameters and then actually how you optimize your current targets that we have on here. So what I recommend is when you first get started, go ahead and just drag down this initial set of parameters. All right. And I'm going to drag this all the way down to the bottom. And I'm just going to let go there. All right, and now I'm going to scroll back up and just kind of get a general understanding of what I'm looking at. So I've got along the top here, you can hover over each header and it'll give an explanation, but in a nutshell, you've got some bid parameter setting inputs here that correlate to a formula, and there's multiple formulas actually with AdTactix. So you can actually set up your bid override table here to use what we call the Apex formula. There's revenue per click times target ACoS. This is a pretty standard optimization ratio-based formula. The revenue per click times your current bid over your cost per click, that's another one. And then there's also an iterative one. So I'll have another video that shows you how to kind of toggle between each one of these. For now, we're just going to stick with the Apex formula. One thing I recommend is actually downloading the formula and actually looking at the logic. So you can do that just by hovering over that little icon there and clicking this link, right? And then that's going to take you to the Google Doc here that just shows kind of the logic, and any of these bold fields will correlate back to the headers here. So you can really get an idea how the function works. But what I recommend is just getting started with pulling that default data down and then looking at your max bid, because this is really important, especially when we're talking about growth. You don't want to limit kind of the formula and functions on how high it can raise your bid if you're doing really well. And especially depending on the niche, that's going to be very niche dependent. So you can see here we've got a few that are over $2, but for the most part, it's pretty well set up for this niche. But it would be good probably in this case to bump this up to maybe $2.50 or $3, something like that. One thing I highly recommend when you first start using AdTactix is don't set things up to be overly conservative, because you don't want sales to just dip down for the sake of a better ACoS from the get-go. You want to honestly try to keep things really steady for the first few weeks to really understand and learn the tool, and then kind of work from there on micro optimizations is the best way. And once you start to get a feel for things over the first really few weeks to a month, you'll start to really leverage some of the ad spend reduction tools and really start to understand the trends on what's working well, and you can start to scale those. So From here, the next step is, again, look at your cost per click, look at this max bid column, make sure everything is checking out as far as, you don't, like, I see like a 219 there. If I had one that was like 319, you just may want to, you can set each one of these independent is the nice thing about kind of segmenting it out at the target level. And what I recommend is once you've kind of set these initial parameters up and you want to get an idea of kind of where your bids are falling out based on those parameters, you can hit this bid preview button, and you can see in blue it's going to populate the new bid, and it's only going to show up actually for the targets, and it's got in red here your original bid, and then the blue is going to be the new bid. So if you do that and you start seeing that this new bid is significantly lower than the red bid, this is where I would recommend you actually don't set the parameters up as conservative at first, and try to get it to where it's coming out pretty consistent with what you're operating at right now. Now, if you do have some that are performing really well, like a 7% ACoS with 97 orders, I'm currently bidding 116. That's where you'd want to potentially bid more aggressive, and you've got a few different levers where you can do that. The main one for if you're doing really well is going to be this up bid by percentage. So you could potentially say, for these keywords that I want to give a lot more room to move, I'm going to increase those to 20%. And then another feature with the Apex formula that you can either enable or not is this checkbox here. So if we don't have it checked like we do now, it's actually going to use the current bid, so 120, and then it's going to increase by the up bid percentage. So actually I was looking at the wrong one. So 116 up by 20% in this case. So if I click this bid preview, you'll see this 128 is actually going to jump up. Okay, so now it's at 139. And we also have a 800% modifier. So this is again just really a dummy file. So I don't know why that's set at 800%, but the potential for this one could go all the way up to 1253 in this case. So wouldn't recommend these settings particular, but I was kind of there to illustrate the placement ranges, and you can actually disable the placement ranges if you uncheck this field and then run your bid preview, but I always like to have it enabled just because it shows you at a glance kind of if you've got your placements percentages set. But yeah, I mean, there's no perfect science on setting up these initial bid parameters. It's really up to the user on how aggressive you want to be. If you're really in ACoS cutting mode, you can set your target ACoS to your break even is a good starting point. And then these two kind of ranges, the mid ACoS threshold and high ACoS threshold, will come into play right here. So you've got your high ACoS threshold and your mid ACoS threshold. The mid ACoS threshold is more for well-performing targets, and then your high ACoS threshold is for your poor performing targets. So you can just whip out your calculator and kind of run through some examples is a good way to do it, and then see how this number is getting calculated and kind of which inputs dictate the different variables. So that's a good way just to kind of get acclimated. The missing bids here, so this is something I wanted to cover in this video, and it's actually a good first step that you run through before you optimize your first set of bulk files. So what you want to do is actually come into each of these three sheets and just come over and click on show missing bids. And what this is if you've set up, especially like auto campaigns, a lot of times this happens where you don't actually establish target level bids when you create the campaigns, and it's going to fall back to the ad group level bid in those cases. So why that's important is because we can't optimize bids based on the formulas if we don't have target level bids established. So you want to run through each of these three sheets really quick and just grab the ad group level bid, which is right here, right next to it, and then paste it, Control-Shift-V, into the bid column. And I'm going to run through and just do that in these as well. All right, so that's really the setup you want to see. That way you know that all of your optimizations and formulas are going to be working properly. All right, now one other thing I want to mention before we get into the actual optimization scripts are this blue column over here. So this is a way you can manually steer any of these kind of segments. So if you've got a lot of target level overrides and you want to say, this optimization formula is great, but I'd rather just manually set my bids based on the data that I'm seeing. You can also actually create your own formulas, so like if formulas, stuff like that, based on any of the parameters. Again, you've got all your top of search product page metrics that you can integrate into those formulas as well. But let's say for this one, for whatever reason, that it's currently running at $1.77 cost per click, and you want to run it up to $2. Just go ahead and type in the number 2 there, and then you can, for the fun of it, show the new bid preview. It's going to show $2 here. This bid preview does not mean it's changed your bid yet. This is just kind of a preview. So we're kind of just making sure all our bid inputs are how we want them before we actually run the optimization. So hopefully this makes sense. You've got other fields here that I didn't really cover that shows you where the targets are showing up. If you do run portfolio overrides, which is another way to do it, and you can see if you hover over here the different types. Let's see right here. So you can either do target level, which is column A from each of the bid files. You've got your campaign name or portfolio name. Portfolio name just comes from the portfolio name in this column here. You've also got a portfolio tab that gives you the numerical value reference, and this is only useful if you need to kind of change the portfolios across campaigns before you update your bulk file. You can actually do that as well. But portfolio names here, you've just kind of got a reference list of those if needed. All right, and then the images over here in the first ASIN field, that's going to be kind of where your core ASIN shows up. If you've got a lot of single ASIN structured campaigns, which is what I recommend, then you'll just have one image showing up for the majority of these. Now you will have, for sponsored brand, headline search ads, you'll see 3 images. And then if you have multiple ASIN structured campaigns set up, which we did see some examples here, like these are in sponsored products, you'll see the first 3 ASINs. You're not going to see more than that. But if you do want to see all of them that are in there, you can always click on the more details. And then you can click in here. And then if you actually pull it down, you can see all of them. So just know that that's kind of there. It's not overly important. All right, and then you've also got a tag and sub-tag fields. This is where I recommend if you want to do like testing, if you've got keywords that you've just launched and you really want to keep a close eye on them, there's a bunch of different ways you can kind of set this up. The other section that a lot of users like to use is there's a little arrow up here. So there's some blank columns here that if you want to use those, go right ahead. Just would not recommend inserting any columns or overwriting any columns because it could potentially mess things up depending on what you do or where you put them. The notes field here, you can actually enter text directly into the notes field. If you hit Control Enter, that's going to add a line break within the cell, so you can actually add multiple lines worth of notes. The other thing you can do is right click on these cells and insert a note, and then that'll kind of create a hover type note that you can store a lot of information in. So that can be helpful. You got your bid strategy that's dynamic down, fixed, or dynamic up down. We went over all of our optimization parameters, and then finally you've got some custom fields off here to the right where you can add more kind of custom things as you wish. The only other icon on here is this default kind of filter. So you'll want to click on this anytime you want to filter this data or sort it. So it's just going to throw, you can see now it's got filters established. So, all right, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this concept, but it is a very important one to understand. I'm going to have another video right after this. It's going to go in a lot more detail on each of the bid formulas, and then also more on the precedent here that I'm going to explain briefly. But right now, all we have on the bid override table is our account level row. You can see I do have a campaign level override on here, and I've got the rest of them are the target level overrides that we applied. If you hover over the override field here, you can see there's actually different options. So you can set target level overrides, which take precedence over campaign level overrides, which take precedence over portfolio, which then take precedence over ASIN level overrides. And then finally, underneath that, you have your account level row. So the main concept to understand is this table is built kind of on a layered precedent criteria where the account level row is the lowest, and we could essentially optimize all of the targets in all 3 of our ad type sheets with just that single row if we wanted. Wouldn't recommend it, but it's definitely doable. And what it ends up using are these bid input settings here in conjunction with the performance level metrics of each target. So don't get confused that just because these rows are on this table here, these are the only ones that are going to get optimized, because if we're using the account level row, which we are right now because we have bid settings established, if we didn't and we just had it like this, and this was yellow, anything yellow in the override column means that your bid input settings aren't set, then everything will get ignored. So you can also use this table just to monitor things. We have users that use other SaaS related tools for their bid optimization, but like the bid override table so much, especially because it's got like tools like the Target Sniper to help monitor things. So but just know that if you're setting this up for full bid optimization, that your account level row is kind of your fallback bid criteria if no other target, campaign, or portfolio or ASIN level overrides are set. Then it's going to use these bid input settings to optimize your bids by. Now, the precedent is pretty self-explanatory. Again, I explained the order there briefly, but as far as how you set it up is you do need to check the override type here in this column, and then you need to either apply the campaign name in the case of campaign level overrides. The target level overrides are what we've done in the example here in this video, which is column A. The portfolio level overrides are actually the portfolio names, so you need to copy the portfolio name from your sponsor product sheet here, which I mentioned that I think earlier. So there's your portfolio name, so you can just grab that and put that in the bid override table as a portfolio level override. I like to use portfolio level overrides a lot for defensive targeting, and branded keywords is another good way to do it. And it's just a way to kind of organize and condense a lot of targets into one portfolio that you can then set specific bid parameters on those. So and then finally you have your ASIN level. So your ASIN level is, there's a monitor ASIN and there's a regular ASIN. The regular ASIN is how you can set up bid parameter settings by per ASIN, and then the monitor ASIN is if you don't want to use it for bid parameter settings, but you just want to use it to kind of monitor the metrics, you can do that. So if I establish a ASIN override here, then I'm actually going to want to put my ASIN in this field here, and there's an ASIN list if you come back to the settings tab. So let's pretend that this ASIN here is the one I want to assign an override to. Control-Shift-V, and I'm just going to sync this now. All right, so after it syncs, it's pulled in all of the metrics, and these are aggregated metrics for any of the targets associated with this ASIN. All right, and if you had this ASIN in sponsored brands and display, it would show up as well under this column as having the multiple. Now, because it's yellow, I haven't assigned bid input settings yet, but if I drug this down, and you can obviously change these and segment things further, but now it's going to use these bid input settings for any ASIN related target that doesn't already have a higher precedent setting set. So if I click on this again, you'll see ASIN's actually the lowest, and it's right above the account level row. So if I have any higher portfolios or campaigns or targets that are also on this list, then those are going to be the overrides that get established and those input settings used. So it's just kind of again a layered precedent principle that you need to understand as far as where the actual bid settings are being used and how that's governing the optimized bid. But once you kind of understand that concept, it's pretty straightforward as long as you have a strategy as far as how you want to set this up, and you set it up properly and then test out your bids with the bid preview. You're pretty well good to go as far as to optimize your bids. And in order to optimize your bids, all you need to do is come up to the Optimize PPC menu, and you're going to click on either, if you want to just optimize one at a time, you can do it this way, or you can use Optimize All and click Apex Formula, since that's the one we have currently set up. And what you're going to see is it's going to actually hop over to each sheet now, and it's going to update that red column here with our new bid. So you're going to see it's going to populate a new value, and that new value is going to be, again, calculated based on our bid input settings that we set on the bid override table, along with the target level metrics of each of the targets on each of these sheets. So right now it's just cycling through all three of them and updating our bids, and then after that it's going to get a prompt. You'll hit OK. You just want to make sure this changes to finished. All right, and then what you can do at this point is, let's say you weren't happy with something that you saw and you wanted to come back and change something. You could change any of the bid input settings. You can actually double check, just if you want to have a gut check, and click on this here, and you can see it should be set at 117. It's got a modifier of 50%. So there's actually some quick search functions here. This only works for sponsored products, but you can click that search bulk sheet and it should take us right to that target. All right, and you can see now 117 is our new bid, and we've got that 50% modifier right there. So all that looks good. Now, one thing I would recommend you do just when you first are getting acclimated is work this review bid changes function in your SOP. And what that's going to do, it's going to kick out a new column here on the far left, and it's actually going to take a subtraction between your current bid and your optimized bid, and it'll sort it as well, so you can just real quickly see, what changed the most, what changed the least. This one dropped by $2, and then you can go back through and say, oh, why did it drop that much? Is that what I want? And let me verify my bid input settings are correct, type of deal. Same deal, if you hit Control Shift down, it'll go down to the bottom, and you can see this one increased by, and make sure everything looks good. All right, and then you can do the same thing with the other two sheets as well. And then when you're ready, the only other things you have to do to create your output file is the fine tuning. This is more of an advanced feature, which is the inline editing on the bid override table. I'll have another video that covers that, but you do need to be mindful of a few things on your bulk sheets that bulk sheets actually doesn't support. So we've got some quick action buttons here that just remove some rows associated with those. So the first one is campaign level negations. So campaign level negations are actually, I'll show you another filter here. If you click anywhere in here, clear all filters, this is going to kind of reset your sheet to its original state and kind of sort order, so that's helpful. So the campaign level negations, if you click on the entity column, you'll see, if you have them, they'll be called campaign negative keywords. And bulk sheets does not allow you to upload those with those rows in the sheet. So in order to remove them, all you need to do is navigate to your sponsored product campaign sheet and hit remove campaign level negatives and hit yes, and just hit OK. And you can see now if I check, they are gone. So that's kind of the intent there. The next one is ASIN expanded targets. Bulk Sheets isn't supporting that yet, and you just need to click this and it's going to remove those rows. You do need to know if you do have those. You just need to optimize them manually in Campaign Manager. And then finally, drafts and negatives with sponsor brands. So you would just go over to sponsor brands and you'd click that kind of quick remove button there, and that's going to remove those. And then when you're ready and you've done those three things, you can create your output file. And because we now have our optimized bid set, then when we create our output file, it's going to have that as our new bid. And then when we upload it back to Amazon, that's how the bid actually gets changed. So just to kind of refresh, I'm going to go back and open this SOP up and kind of show you, just so you can reference this as you're going through it. So you can see this covers a lot of detail on understanding the bid precedent that I touched on. There's us optimizing our bids, which we just talked about. Exporting to Google Drive. I haven't done that step yet. I'm getting ready to do that. So, remove some of the unsupported features, and then you'll just create your output file, and then you're going to upload that then back to Amazon, and that'll take you to this screen here, which again, you want to make sure you have your new spreadsheet format selected. You don't need to worry about any of this when you're uploading a file, but then you click choose file, and then you got to locate the file that I'll show you here in a minute how to create, and then you just upload that. And then I have a note down here as far as the next optimization cycle. You're actually just going to start from the beginning of this video and do everything over, starting from importing a new bulk file. And there's actually a quick field or a quick button here to remove any of your old sponsored product brands or display campaign sheets that you can click here before you import your next bulk file. So that's kind of coming full circle. But to create your final output file and upload that to Amazon, you can just click export all here. It's the one I like to use. It just creates 3 separate files that you can upload, and it's going to automatically save them here if you read into your FBA Excel export files folder. So I'm going to hit yes. Now you can see what it does though. It does delete some columns. So it's important to note that other functionality in the tool, like if you want to create bulk negate files, new campaign files, there's a lot of additional advanced features in AdTactix that it's important that you treat the bid optimization process as kind of your last step, in a sense that you create these final output files and upload them to Amazon. As long as you don't hit the button that we just hit that actually creates the files, then these columns don't get removed, so you can still interact with a lot of the other tools. But as soon as you run the script that I'm running right now, you're pretty much done until you import another bulk file and get it in that state. And then once that script runs, you can go back to your drive folder and go to FBA Excel export files, and you'll see the 3 files that it created right here. So these are the ones that you're going to upload back to Amazon, and then all your bids will be changed. And then finally, for the next time that you want to optimize things, you'll just come up here and click delete use sheets, and you'll see this is going to actually remove everything. Kind of just resets the system, says all done, and then you're back to downloading another bulk file. All right, so let's pretend it's a couple days from now and I want to optimize things for the second time. Here, you'd want to go here to download and import bulk file, grab a new bulk file for the past 30 days or whatever date range you select, save that like we did at the beginning of the video. And again, I'm going to pretend that this one that I have here is our updated file. So I'm going to import this. All right, and then once that green loading bar stops and it says saved, you're good to hit sync all data. All right, so one important thing to note is if you read this prompt, and I would recommend you guys read every prompt at least for the first time so you fully understand what's going on. But it says is if you imported a new bulk file, make sure you sync your bid override table before optimizing your bids to view the updated data. So it's not going to really matter as far as it's still going to use the most updated 30-day metrics in order to recalculate your bids. But if you do want to see the most updated reference data on your bid override table for potentially tweaking any of the input settings or things like that, you do need to hop over to the bid override table at this state and just resync things, and that'll pull in kind of the new metrics here. You can decide, hey, do I want to change anything? You can kind of resort your table here depending on if you have a specific SOP that you've developed. But that's just an important point there, that you do need to resync that in order to see the new data here. One other thing a lot of users like to do is they like to use these custom columns off here to the right to copy kind of static data and track it. It's more of a relative comparison when you do this, but for example, you could copy the ACoS column and paste that in this custom one field and maybe just keep track of your last 7 days, and then you could see a relative movement in the metrics depending on your optimization sequences that you do. So the nice thing about the second time you do it is your bid override table is going to be all set up. So it's a matter of getting to this step and saying, hey, do I want to tweak anything? If not, then it's as easy as coming up here, clicking optimize bids, and clicking the function that you want to use, and then it's just going to take the new metrics over whatever date range you select on your bulk file, apply your bid parameter settings, update your bids, and then you're off to the races as far as uploading a new file. So after the first time, it should only take honestly 5 to 10 minutes if all you're doing is optimizing your bids. Again, there's a ton of other features here which we're going to be covering in subsequent videos that can add to that time, but as far as the bid optimization, it becomes really simplistic after that. So hope this video helped, and stay tuned for the next video. It's going to go over a lot more in the different bid formulas, and we'll go through some examples and just get a firm understanding on kind of how this bid override tables working together with your bulk files to optimize all your bids, so you've got a little more clarity around that. So see you on that video. Cheers.